Behind the Dish is sponsored by DBAT. Check out dbat.net for baseball and softball products, franchise information, and to find a location near you. And now your host, John Piper.
Welcome to another episode of Behind the Dish. I'm John Piper. Very pleased to be joined by a legend in the coaching business, Coach Keith Madison, a former head coach of the Kentucky Wildcats. Spent 25 years there as a head coach, amassed 737 career wins, Kentucky High School Baseball Hall of Famer, University of Kentucky Hall of Famer, American Baseball Coaches Association Hall of Famer. Man, it goes on and on and on. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Well, thank you. It's really good to be with you.
Well, we have a unique backstory where I'm from Lexington, Kentucky. You coached there for many, many years. Of course, I still bleed blue. I've got a Kentucky basketball from the 78 championship team in my office. Unfortunately, I don't have any baseballs signed by any teams, but maybe you can help me get some of those.
We can make that happen.
That would be cool. You know, growing up there, hey, let's face it, Kentucky basketball, fast horses, and Kentucky bourbon was what that area was known about. During that era, not a lot of people knew about Kentucky baseball, but you helped put them on the map.
Well, thank you. It was really a blessing. And before I get started on that, people used to say around here that Kentucky is known for bourbon, fast women, and beautiful horses.
No, you said fast women, not me, Coach. You said it.
But yeah, it was. My whole story about how I ended up coaching at Kentucky is it's really interesting, and looking back on my life, it's really a part of God's plan of where He wanted me to be, and how He wanted my life to go. No question about it. I'm from a really small town in South Central Kentucky. Nobody's ever heard of it. And
well, hey, give it a shot. What town was it, Coach? What town were you from? What town were you from?
Brownsville, Kentucky. It's, as you know, in Kentucky, unless you're from Lexington or Louisville, everybody else says, I'm from Mercer County, I'm from Pulaski County, and blah, blah, blah. I'm from Edmonson County, and Brownsville is the county seat, population 800. It's the largest town in the entire county. So I'm really a small-town boy. So when I graduated from high school, I had no idea what I was going to do. I had never met a college coach. I had never met a pro scout. And I was playing American Legion baseball in Bowling Green, Kentucky, which is about 30 miles away. And we're playing at Brooks Stadium in Paducah, Kentucky. And I was supposed to pitch in front of Johnny Reagan. He was sort of a legendary coach at Murray State University, and that's where I wanted to go at that time. But actually, our coach brought me in relief the night before. The good news is I had the game of my life. It was I'd never pitched that well before, and after that game, a couple of pro scouts talked to me, and they handed me their little cards as they do, and I was so excited. I remember, this was years ago, so we didn't have cell phones, but I remember going to a payphone at the restaurant where we ate after the game in Paducah, called my dad. I said, Dad, you're not going to believe this. I met a pro baseball scout tonight, and he actually thought I pitched pretty good. So to make a long story short, one of those scouts was from the Montreal Expos, and I signed with Montreal as a 17-year-old.
You had already graduated high school, is that right, Coach?
Yeah, Edmonson County High School, just graduated, and it was actually after the draft, John, and so I signed as a free agent, and it was late in the summer, so they let me just go a full year of school, and then I went to rookie ball and all that, but I was in the Expos organization for 3 years, and the Reds organization for 2 years. Thankfully, went to school during the off season, got my degree at Western Kentucky University, met my wife there, coached 2 years of high school baseball in Lake Wales, Florida. Had a cousin down there that hooked me up with the job. I one of the coaches I worked with played for Ron Polk, who was the coach at Georgia Southern when he played. He had moved on to Mississippi State. He told me one day, he said, hey, I want you to meet Ron Polk because he has graduate assistantships. I think you might have a future as a coach. Why don't you meet him and see if we can work out a graduate assistantship? So that happened. I met Ron at an ABCA clinic in Miami, Florida. I go to Starkville and get my master's degree there. My wife and I moved to Starkville. And then I got to tell you this little side story, John. At the end of the season, when I was at Mississippi State that first year, I'm getting on the bus. We're going down to Auburn to play in an SEC series. And I'm getting on the bus, and Coach Polk said, Keith, did you hear about the Kentucky job being open? And I said, yeah, I think somebody told me about that. He said, have you sent your resume yet? And I said, Coach, I'm 26 years old. And he said, no, send your resume. I won't hurt anything. I'll make a phone call for you.
Well, Coach, that's definitely unheard of now. Was that unheard of even back then, being a 26-year-old, even applying for a head job?
Exactly. This was in 1978. And so I sent my resume in. I never heard from Cliff Hagan, the athletic director, but I was in Kentucky visiting my folks and actually interviewing for a junior college job in Illinois. And I decided I was going to call Cliff Hagan and see if he'd fill that position. So I just picked up the phone and called him. And I was scared to death because, as you know, being from Lexington, Cliff Hagan is
legendary.
He's
legendary.
He's not three-time All-American, All-NBA player. Looks like a movie star, big guy. But I called him. I said, Mr. Hagan, have you filled the baseball coaching position? He said, I haven't. I said, I'm in Kentucky visiting with my family. Could I come up and talk to you about the job? He said, yes. Can you be here at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning? So I drove from Brownsville, Kentucky to Lexington the next day. One thing led to another. I get offered the job as a 26-year-old guy that basically had 5 years of minor league baseball experience, 2 years of high school coaching experience, and 1 year as a graduate assistant at Mississippi State. And Coach Polk was kind enough to let me be the pitching coach. So that's how it happened. And here, I always have to tell this, too. The day that Cliff Hagan called me in our little apartment in Starkville, Mississippi, he called me and offered me the job. And I get off the phone, and I go into our living room, and I said, Sharon, you're not going to believe this, but Cliff Hagan just offered me the job at Kentucky. And she started crying, and she said, I'm pregnant.
Oh, wow.
I found out that I was going to have my first child, and I was going to get a job, the head coaching job at a school that I loved. And even though I went to Western, I was a Kentucky Wildcat fan through and through. It was almost too much. I almost had a heart attack. So it was quite a day for me, and that's how that whole thing got started. So I spent 25 years as the head baseball coach, and those early years were fun and challenging because the head coaching position at Kentucky at that time was part-time. And so I had to find other ways to make money to support my family.
So did you take another job, like when baseball season was over, instead of hitting the recruiting trail, were you having to work somewhere in Lexington?
Yeah, I had to. You're just not going to believe some of the jobs I did. I worked for, and this fits perfectly for Kentucky, but I worked for a man that owned 17 Kentucky Fried Chickens, and he also provided chicken in supermarkets. I would go around to supermarkets to talk to the butchers to see if the chickens were good and if they had any complaints. Just sort of a PR type job. And I also worked part time for Midas Muffler.
Yeah.
And I worked, and then I started my own business. I started a calendar business, and that went really well until I became a full time coach. And
what year did you become? What year did you become actually a full-time University of Kentucky employee?
It was after my third year of coaching. So I spent 3 years just coaching, recruiting, taking care of the field. Whatever I could do to help build a program. and then also working these part-time jobs. And then, thankfully, Mr. Hagan made the position full-time. I was the only part-time coach in the Southeastern Conference. So the thing that I always, probably the only thing I have to hang my hat on is in those first 3 years, we broke the school record for wins twice, and we finished second in the Eastern Division of the SEC twice. And that's with me being a part-time coach. So, we really worked hard. It was challenging. It was fun. But back in those days, in a lot of programs, that's what you had to do to get going. There was nothing really given to you. If you wanted to improve your facilities, you had to go out and raise the money yourself. If you wanted to promote your season, you called the television stations and the radio stations yourself. You did it all. So when I think of programs now like the University of Kentucky, like TCU, like Texas A&M, like LSU, they have so many resources now, and I'm really happy for them. I think it's awesome that the sport has grown that way, but it hasn't always been that way.
Coach, you make a great point. Coming on as a part-time employee, being committed to the program and your craft, not knowing what the future holds with Cliff Hagan, the athletic director, and just being all in and seeing the results you had. Part of our audience is, parents of players, coaches, business owners. There's a life lessons there that you were all in and it paid off. But, hey, I do want to take a step back. That night, I think it was a Friday night, you pitched 3 innings, Bowling Green, Kentucky. You were fortunate enough to strike out 9. So that opportunity really came out of left field, the Montreal Expos being there. What were your life plans if you didn't get to pitch that night, or you pitched Saturday and had a bad outing? You probably had another path you were going to take other than baseball.
Well, I was actually, my plan was to walk on at Murray State University or Western Kentucky University, one of those two schools, and just prove that I could do it. And so fortunately, I didn't have to do that. But my original goal was to play basketball. I wanted to play basketball at the University of Kentucky. That was my.
That's every kid's dream, right?
Hey, that was what I wanted to do, and I was okay at basketball. Looking back, I wasn't nearly as good as I thought I was. When I watched what guys can do with the basketball nowadays compared to what I could do, it's like in a different universe. But that's that. Most kids in Kentucky, especially in rural Kentucky, they grow up wanting to play basketball for the Cats. It's a basketball state, and my baseball coach brought me, my high school baseball coach, who I love to this day, brought me back to reality. We played a Louisville team one night in my senior year, and this guy guarding me was 3 inches taller than me and twice as quick as I was. And not only did I not score, but about 2 points that night, I couldn't even get a shot off. So the next day, my baseball coach walked up to me and he said one word, baseball. And so that's when I realized that, hey, I really need to focus on baseball if I'm going to play college sports. So I love baseball just as much as basketball, but basketball is so big in Kentucky, that's what every kid dreamed of doing. Yeah,
I had a chance to play actually with Cliff Hagan's son. He was a few years older than I was, but in some youth leagues around Henry Clay High School. Kip Hagan was his name. He was a phenomenal athlete as well. And I remember seeing Mr. Hagan, Cliff Hagan, in the stands there, and like you said, just walk in and everybody would just kind of take a step back and like, whoa, legend, athletic director. And I learned, hey, I could hit a set shot with no one guarding me in practice, but in a game, same thing. I realized, baseball, football, or some other sports was my calling. But hey, we all love the game growing up there in Central Kentucky, no doubt about it.
Yeah, no doubt. And sometimes, but all those basketball games I played, and all the times I competed against my brother one-on-one in the backyard, and all those things taught me a lot about competing as a baseball player. And I think sometimes with everything that's going on in amateur baseball right now, and it is awesome. I mean, I think I'm not one of those old coaches that's down on travel baseball or showcases. I think they're awesome. But sometimes the missing element is competing. And I think when you play other sports, it helps